tonight, and I'm happy that we had a good turnout because this is a regional park that we're talking about today. It's for the community as a whole, and it's something that's gonna guide the future development of this park for many years to come. And it's gonna serve the community as a whole for a long time. So really appreciate everybody coming out. If you haven't already done so, again, we're having drawing tonight for 8 gift cards, $25 a piece, I believe. So if you haven't done so, please push your name down on a piece of paper and put it in the box up there, and we'll hold that drawing at the end of the presentation, at the end here. So also there's coffee back here. Help yourself to a cup of coffee if you'd like. And with that, I guess I'm going to get started. Again, my name is Justin Knaus. I'm the city engineer for the city of Montrose. I'm with the consulting firm of Bolton & Mink, so I'm a consultant city engineer for the city. I've been here for quite a few years, been working in the city since about 2005. And our firm as a whole has been working for the city since early 2000s. So we're very happy to work for the city and anxious to help them out in any way we can in their daily life. So this evening, we're talking about the regional park. Some of you may have heard it called the Rolling Meadows Park previously. We have sort of since shifted to more calling it the regional park at this time. In the future, more than likely, we'll give it a certain name. But it has been called Rolling Meadows Park in the past just because of the vicinity of where the park is at. This first figure that I'm showing you here is where the park location is. This roadway, north-south roadway right here is County Road 12, or Montrose, County Road 12, I'm sorry, Buffalo Avenue. It's on the north end of town. This is the Rolling Meadows development right here. This is Aspen Lane. So it's basically the last, as you're going north out of town, it's the last roadway going north where you take a left. And it's currently a vacant parcel right here. So the area outlined in blue is the park property that we're talking about here today. Then, like I mentioned, this area right here is recent residential single-family development that's been constructed over the past 5 to 8 years. On the far left of the map, you can just barely see it right here. There's a roadway. That's actually the Forest Creek development. That's accessed off of Clementa Avenue over here. There is kind of a cart path area here that some people may use for walking and such. That's connected right off the end of this road and sort of follows and connects into the end of the road there. So this is a point of reference of where we're at. As a broader picture, the area in white right here is when the Rolling Meadows plat was developed. This was also part of what we call the preliminary plat. As a matter of fact, the blue also was too. So the Rolling Meadows preliminary plat encompassed this entire area around here. Since that time, there's been no future development of this, but it's all preliminary plat means it's basically been laid out into what it may look like in the future. To the north here in pink is school district property that's owned by the school district. The school district has owned that property for a number of years, and their long-term plan is that property would be used in the future for a middle school. A second middle school. As the population increases in the area, the school district sees an increase in numbers of students. When the need arises, that would be the site of the second middle school. The area in yellow here is privately owned property. And the reason we have a brown line running through here is as we're making plans for the park, we wanted to sort of focus in that in the future as things develop, there should be some sort of a connection between the school district property up here and the park property. We envision that the park will eventually be used by the school district, and some of the facilities could be shared by the school district. We've already talked to the school district about that, and they have shown an interest in that, not only in the future, but also more near term, as the field space is always on the short end of things. So that's where we are regionally. Just a little bit of history on the property. The city has had, when the Rolling Meadows development came into the city and was developed, this lower 5-acre piece right here was provided and given to the city, and that was part of the park dedication property that the developer had to give. And there also is a city lift station. If you notice out there right now, there's a small area that's fenced in. That's a sanitary sewer lift station owned by the city. Then there's also up in the upper right-hand corner here, there's a small ball field that has been developed over the past few years. And it's a very small field. It's just a little gravel area, kind of a t-ball type size field. Really not fully developed, but I believe the Boy Scouts may have had some work done on that. And it served a purpose as a small youth or maybe t-ball type field. And then the additional area, so this piece right here, and then everything north of here. So this entire area right here was owned by the developer. The developer, during the downturn in the housing economy, did not pay their taxes on that property. And what had happened is it went into tax forfeiture, meaning they did not pay their taxes. And through the process of that, the city has the right to receive that property for very minimal cost, or really no cost at all. In exchange, the city has to use it for a public purpose. That being like a park or any sort of a public building, anything like that. So the city decided that, they really don't have a very large regional park, and he figured, it's too good of an opportunity, too good of a location, right along County Road 12, that they could go ahead and take the property, at least for now, and see what we can do with it for a future park. Obviously, it's a very large site. In total, it's about roughly 24 acres in total. I mentioned that the city did receive the property for essentially free. However, there was about $70,000 in city assessments that were on this property from adjacent roadway improvements that basically the city did not collect on because the property owner did not pay taxes. The city never received the assessment amount of that. So whether you say or not the city received it for free is sort of, they did receive it for free, however, we didn't collect on our assessment. Like I mentioned, it's a very large area. It's about 24 acres in total. The city council and staff realizes that would be a long-term plan. It's not something that's going to be developed overnight. We felt that back in 2012, when the city acquired the property, there was a wide range of thoughts and ideas on what to do with the property. And everybody had their own ideas, and there's a lot of good ideas out there. But everybody had their ideas and how to, what to build first and where to build it and how to do it and where to put the money. But there's just a lot of ideas floating around. And at that time, really, you can do that first one or two projects pretty easily. It's easy to do that first project. You've got a wide open field. You can put it anywhere you want, whatever you do. But you do that first project, maybe that second project, and then after that, all of a sudden you become landlocked. And if things didn't fit in the way, if you didn't have a plan for it, it's difficult to develop it and make full use of the property the way to maximize its efficiency and maximize your dollars that you're putting towards it. So council and staff felt it was important to develop a master plan for the park and a concept plan. That way, that provides a planning tool for the future, for future residents, for future city staff, for future city council members, for future Parks Commission members. It's a guide, it's a map, it's a tool that can be used for a long ways down the road. And after this is developed, or after this is in place, as the needs arise for certain aspects of the park, they can be built one by one and not necessarily, you know where they're gonna go. So that's kind of where we're at this evening. And most of all, like I mentioned, this is a park that's gonna be for the community. It's gonna even be outside the community. Tonight we've invited people from the township. We've invited people from the county and other, the school district and other areas, because it's gonna be a regional park. People outside of the city are likely gonna use it as well. And that's really what council wants, is they want it to be a focal point of the city. You know, something that really, one thing that Montrose is really known for. A lot of other communities around the area might have a nice lake or other features. Montrose doesn't have the lake, but they want to have a nice regional park that's an attraction to many people, and people can talk about it. So that's what's been discussed, and that's the wishes and dreams. So, first step to develop that input from the community that we really wanted to get community input on and make sure it was something that is we could meet the needs of the community as a whole as much as possible. We sent out a community-wide survey back in the spring of 2013. There's been park surveys done in the past in the city. This one was a survey was done, and there was multiple questions on the survey that asked in general about park facilities for the city. But then there was one question in particular that asked people to rank if the city were to develop a regional park, what would be their top priorities or top wishes. And I know this is a little hard to read up here. I'm gonna just sort of run through this real quickly. And what we did is we put down, I'm gonna say however many items there are on the left there, 10 to 12 different items, and asked everybody to rank them from 1 through 12. What is your top priority? What is your lowest priority? And what we did is we summarized in here how many people ranked, basically how many people ranked each one in their top 5 list. Actually, the number one item that came out of that, of the top 5, was a picnic area and shelter with restrooms. 63% of the people had that ranked in their somewhere in the top 5. The second one was an outdoor pool. 62% of surveys came back with that in their top 5. And then number 3 was a playground facility. Number 4 was a splash pad. Number 5 was a natural area, or natural kind of a preserve type area. There was 2 that were tied for 6th place, and that was between a baseball, softball field and a library. Next was a basketball court, and in 9th place came a hockey rink / warming house. And I sort of stopped at that. There was the other items that were on the list was a city hall / recreational facility, geocaching, rugby field, satellite fire station, soccer field, tennis courts, and volleyball courts. Of those that I listed in the top 9, all of those ranked 34% or higher. So they got to be fairly close. After the top 2, they were all bunched together pretty close. And really, there was a total of 134 people that returned the survey. So, in relative, it's kind of a small relation to the entire population of Montrose. But that's what we got. So from that survey, the City Council and Parks Commission met, and we reviewed those survey results. We took that information with also the information that the Parks Commission has been working through over the past years in developing parks and what fits where. Some things, for instance, like a splash pad, that was ranked very high. But then we looked at, is this park the best spot for a splash pad? We realize it's a need and a want of the city, but is this the best spot and best fit for it? And things like a splash pad, it was actually discussed that maybe more of a centrally located spot in town, down there where the tennis courts currently are, just north of here on the west side of County Road 12, might be a better fit might be more centrally located. And so just because they weren't shown here doesn't mean they were ignored, but they were sort of put in the plan together. So from that input, then Bolton and Mink came up with 3 different concept plans. Each one was unique. Each one had its own features. Each had a different layout in the park, different layout of the roads, different features, etc. We then held a second meeting with the Parks Commission and the council and reviewed those concept plans. Took each piece of each concept plan and which one's the best, and sort of put them together into one final plan that we felt would best serve your needs. And that's really where we're at tonight, is showing you what is the preferred layout. I'll just run through it real briefly, and that's what, did we have enough copies for everybody, or did everybody get one that wanted one? There's still some up there. So if you didn't get one, there might be a few more up there. But in the lower left-hand corner here, so in the lower left-hand corner here, we have a conglomeration of soccer fields. And you'll see there's some different numbers on the soccer fields. U6, you'll see a U8, and then the U6s are more for youth type of soccer, and U8 is sort of middle-aged, 8-year-old type soccer. And then what you can do is you can actually share 2 U8 fields to make a full-size adult soccer field. So that's kind of the way it's laid out, is that you can maximize the space by sharing field space. You can split them up into smaller fields, or you can combine them to make one larger field. Then overlaid over that, you see there's kind of a lighter green shaded area, and it says possible outdoor hockey rink. That would be the size of an outdoor hockey rink, and that could be used in the wintertime right over the top of the soccer fields. Includes a fenced-in dog park area. It includes rain garden. You'll see there's several spots where there's rain gardens and blue blobs right here. And what a rain garden is basically just stormwater treatment. They have plant materials that uptake the water, and it's really a permit requirement that we have to follow by the MPCA. Being we're increasing impervious area in the park, we have to put in a stormwater pond, and we have to put in a rain garden. So that's a requirement that we have to do. A small parking lot here, and then the city lift station has to stay in that spot. That's a fixed location. The orange here is trails, walking trails, so it'd be a paved trail system within the park. There's a series of 3 tennis courts up there. This would be kind of a smaller playground area. And then there's another larger, what we call regional playground area up here. And that would be a larger playground than anything the city has currently right now. That might be something more on the verge of like what Delano, if anybody's been to the Delano facility where their baseball fields are, I think they have a very large regional type playground. So larger type facility. Then single basketball court is here. Up here we have 2 softball/baseball fields. This one here is a little bit smaller. It's a softball, or you can use a softball field or a little league field. And this one would be a typical size of a high school type baseball field. This is a concession area with restrooms. There's another small restroom area down here in red. It's just restrooms only. Just basically that's it. This corner has been sort of reserved for possible future city center use, like City Hall or a civic center type use. Could be like a senior center, could be a youth center. There's a lot of ideas talked about that in our meetings, but nothing really hammered out completely. And as the need arises for that, obviously that's a high cost item, and that's something that's probably more further down the road. But as discussions occur and the need arises for something like that, there'll need to be additional scoping that'll be done for that piece in particular. And that would really lay out exactly what's going to be included in that building. What does the size of the building need to be? What would it serve, and things like that. We did put in some general, just what we sort of guesstimated maybe would be a good building size at this point. It's a little bit arbitrary at this point. There's a roadway that's already built into the site from the south. There's an existing road that comes up to this point here right now. It's curb and gutter, storm sewer, water main, sanitary sewer, that's fully developed right now. The park plan would continue that roadway all the way through the park and all the way to the north. And then you'll see on County Road 12 up here, there is actually an entrance, a little pull-out area off of County Road 12 right now. And that is for a future roadway. The city's master comprehensive transportation plan does call for this roadway to be extended through to the west in the future. So this would connect up to it. We felt that the roadway going through the park was the best fit. For one thing, it provides better accessibility to the different amenities in the park, especially to seniors and handicapped people. You know, if they want to watch a baseball game, they don't have to park down here and then walk all the way up to look at the baseball game. They can drive through the park, park in the parking lot, sit in their car, watch the game, or get out and you know, watch it right there. Also felt like controlling the park was easier that way, but controlling it, you know, making sure that the right activities are going on and things of that nature. So that was really some benefits that the council and parks commission thought was good to have a roadway running through the park like that. Some of the things that they mentioned why that might not be as positive is, you know, concerns about cut through traffic, but really it's really a road that's not going to really lead anywhere. If you're going over there, you're going to go on this road here, and if you're going here, you're going to go on this road. There's not much of a reason to cut straight through. It doesn't. It's going to be a dead end here and a dead end there. It's not really going anywhere. Again, we did highlight there a future trail connection to the school site at some point in time. So that's a real brief summary of the layout. And again, today we're seeking your input, sort of explain that. The council wants to hear from you. What do you like about the idea? What don't you like? What do you want to see? What do you think needs to be developed first? What do you see as the first priority? Or do you like the plan at all, or don't you like it? You know, you want to go gangbusters? Things like that. The city wants to hear, council wants to hear generally what you're thinking. Just a few other background pieces of information before I open it up to the public. Costs spent to date on the project have been around, total expenses were around $13,000, and that includes the planning, developing the master plan for this, and other miscellaneous items up there. There is some revenue. The city rented out the land for 1 year at $3,000, so we're net cost today of about $10,000. As far as next steps go, after tonight, council would decide how to proceed basically, and how fast to proceed and what to proceed with first. There is a few next logical steps that really should be done first before any development of the park. And one thing that we talked about continually throughout this is researching and applying for any grants. So we'll always, and that was another reason that I didn't mention, another reason why developing this concept plan goes a long ways for any grant opportunities. Any grants, the ones that are most successful, have a very clear-cut plan laid out. And that's every grant just about will ask, is this project laid out in a plan that's been adopted by the community? So that goes a long ways. If you don't have that, they see it as something you're just sort of fricking in the air, you're sort of reaching and grabbing, and it hasn't been well thought out and well laid out. And rarely do you get funded if you don't have it laid out on a plan. Then the next things that would need to be done would be a wetland delineation, some soil borings, a topographic survey, and then a grading plan for the site. And then the next logical, course of action would be do some grading on the site. And after that, then really the park itself could begin to be developed at any location or any point, not necessarily at any point, because if you develop it in the middle, we're going to need to build some roads to get there, so that's obviously going to be more costly. But once grading is done, maybe the south end of the park might be the more logical place to start. But that's kind of, some of that work could be done this year, and then really probably the first anything could be really developed would be probably looking at either late this year or next year. The city does have $120,000 budgeted in 2014 for regional park development. The current council is planning to develop the park incrementally as funds are available. So the current council isn't planning to bond for improvements at this time. They're planning to just do it as funds become available. That's not to say that, you know, down the road, bonding may become necessary, especially for something like a building. That's hundreds of thousands, $millions. But for right now, for more of the smaller development, that's the plan from the council that we've been hearing. So with that, there would be no net tax increase as a result of the regional park development at this time. And like I mentioned before, the long-term building projects may change that. With that, I guess I will open it up to however you wish to. Sure. Yep.
I did bring a few of these. I didn't expect so many people. But what this lays out is the city's debt. And it, we'd like to pass, maybe you can share them. So what that shows, and what we've talked about is with our capital improvement plan at this time.
Sharon, can you change the microphone so we can hear you better?
Oh, sure, sorry, is that better? So with the city's capital improvement plan, what I've recommended to the city council is at this time, we just are kind of status quo. And when you look at this, the bonds are listed on the left side, and the yearly payment is listed next to it, the principal, and then a column that lists the maturity date. And beginning in 2018, our bonds start falling off. We acquired quite a bit of debt when we had a lot of growth, you know, with infrastructure, water, sewer, roads, whatnot. And now, beginning 2018, we lose 2 large bonds. And if you spend 2019, 20, 22, 21, and you know, as that debt starts falling off, I believe that would be the time to look at greater development of this park. In the interim, our local government aid, which the city gets every year from the state of Minnesota, we can apply some of that to the regional park development. This year we had an increase of $79,000, so we applied $75,000 to help pay the cost to do the grading and whatnot for next year. And we also earn a little money. If we don't spend everything we budgeted for, we can take that money and apply it to a park development as well. So the intent of the city council is just to build it with the cash on hand, not to increase taxes. And as the bonds start to fall off, then to look at perhaps bonding for a larger project, a baseball field or a community center, something like that. So if you have any questions along those lines, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, the city council will address any of your questions. Thanks. Would you mind coming up to the podium and speaking? Maybe?
Sure.
Maybe I can look for that.
Dave Lund. Just as a quick question, so when you look at all the parts and pieces of compliance, just if you're approaching this as a long-term project, have you done any work to estimate the costs of each one of these components, whether it's restrooms or soccer fields or a shelter or a tennis court, or all those types of things? Do we have any estimates as to what those particular components would cost, so that when you start to figure out what can we build first, we're not going to, so to speak, blow it all on a tennis court when in fact we already have one in town or whatever. Has any of that been done yet?
Yeah, that's a great question, and as a matter of fact, we have done that at a very, what I call a high level cost. So meaning it's low detail, it's in general nature. Since these aren't final plans, we can't do real detailed estimates, but we can get a ballpark idea of what things typically cost. And as a matter of fact, if you guys saw on the flyer that you received, the back of that has the park on it. And in white, not what you received tonight, but what you would have received in the newsletter, in the mail, there is some cost associated with that right on that flyer, in general terms. So, yes.
Just when you talk about the grading study, that lots of, most logical things to do first, and the cost of that, and then grading is the next step as it falls into our budget and what's left over then.
Sure. As I mentioned, the next logical steps, right now this is only a plan on paper. It has no surface elevations to it, you might say, and it has no, it's only conceptual in nature. No survey's been done. So the next step is really to create a grading plan so that somebody can go out there and start moving dirt. And associated with that, we need to go out and delineate wetlands, soil borings, and all that stuff. That's in the ballpark of around $30,000 to do that, and develop that grading plan and do that work, so that the next step can be done.
And that also satisfies the state's requirements that we started that are improvements on the project.
Yeah, I believe that once we've developed a grading plan for it and we've started some grading on it, that would meet that requirement. There is some timeline requirements associated with it. You can't just sit on this for 10 years and do nothing. There is, I believe it's three years that we have to start improvements on the land that we acquired through tax forfeiture. So something does have to be done there. Doesn't mean it has to be fully developed. I think by having a plan in place, having a grading plan, and starting some work in one corner, you're fulfilling that.
We have 2 years left, though, right?
That's correct.
2 years already gone by?
Yes. Yep. That's a good point. So what we're looking at is with the $120,000 that we have budgeted this year, we could complete the grading plan, and we could also start on some grading work. We've had some preliminary discussions among city staff about how much it would cost to do it in-house with public works staff versus how much it would cost to do it, hire it done through a contractor. And really, before we make a final decision on that, we need to do that grading plan. So we need to know how much dirt we need to move, where to move it from, what type of equipment is needed, things of that nature. But there's a very good possibility that the city may be able to do some of that to reduce the cost. But it depends on, how many man hours Public Works has available, how much equipment is available, and what all those costs are. Fuel is very expensive as well. Yeah, so grant applications, the further along we are, the better.
So once you got the grading plan done, all the stakes will be put in and everything, we'll know how much dirt has been put in each spot, and we won't overdo anything, so we'll never go back.
Right, so you don't have to do it twice. That's our goal. Do it once and do it right.
Conservatively, we figured that it would be another $30,000 for in-house grading and rental of the equipment and fuel costs, and that would probably get us half of our budget left.
Yeah, we've checked into that a little bit further, and I think our estimates were off maybe a little bit.
So we were low.
I think we were low, yeah.
So, okay, so then we're looking at $30,000-$40,000 at the most left over in the budget for any kind of, so I'm ready to look at what's in that.
I would say
Maybe a
if-
playground or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, we need to develop that a little further. The cost actually came in much higher than what we were throwing. We were throwing around some pretty rough numbers at first. So, yeah, the rental costs, in fact, even get equipment can be difficult.
The oil rush in North Dakota, things become very difficult.
When you speak about the budget like that, are you talking about the 120,000 that's for this year?
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Excuse me. I'm Charlie Burrell, Wright County Commissioner, but I just wanted to get something out as far as might save you some money. When we did the fields at Waverly, where the old school used, well, the elementary school is now, they used National Guard. They as their summer thing, they camped out in the school and they came out and they did the entire thing for free. So check that out. Those guys are looking for projects to do sometimes. So.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in Stonjander, I live in Montrose here. I noticed a couple of times, I keep noting that might be a middle school there. Do you know what kind of time frame the school would be looking at that? Is that like 40 years out? Or?
We don't. When we met with the school district, I asked the same question, and right now their numbers don't show a need for it. It's going to be completely dependent on growth.
Has there been any cost sharing discussions with them, like with the school or the county, or getting state legacy funds? I mean, you talked about grants.
Yeah, they're.
Essentially be a regional park this way. Right?
We only met with them once to sort of float it by, and yeah, I think, those discussions need to occur, and they will occur as we develop further. We see that as a potential way to share resources and cost flow. So.
And then Dave asked about the cost for the park. I don't remember what the flyer had on there. Do you remember what those numbers might be? I know you're talking 10, 20 years, and in 4 years you'll start having debt go away. And
the flyers on the website, I don't actually have it all lumped together in one complete cost because it won't be developed all at once. So I purposely tried to break it apart into separate pieces. Excuse me. For instance, the high school baseball field there was at $400,000. The soccer fields, anywhere from like the smaller playground was right around $20,000 to the regional playground being more in the range of $200,000. Tennis courts around $112,000, basketball court $45,000, picnic shelter $18,000. So there's a lot of costs in here. Those give you somewhat of an idea. Soccer fields, we're at $52,000 for the one set and $21,000 for the other set. And some of those can be phased in too. That includes lights and fencing and things like that, and some of that stuff. So, you wouldn't necessarily need to do all of it right away. You would want to accommodate it.
Is grading part of that too?
Yeah, grading is part of, site grading is $120,000. That's just for kind of I sort of have site grading broken out in a couple different areas. The phase 1 portion, which includes the pond and such, that includes a lot of the street area, and the ponding, the grading, and things of that nature is $750,000. So there's some grading included in that number, and then there's for the remaining site $120,000 for that site grading. But to refine those numbers more, we need to do a grading. They give you somewhat of an idea. Yes.
What would be your recommendation to us is the first implementation of this park? And to become more cost effective in your recommendation? What would you say would be the first thing that we should do?
Well, me personally, outside of the things that we've already talked about, doing the grading plan and doing the grading, outside of that, I think probably the most cost-effective areas, so you don't have to build a bunch of roads and infrastructure to get into the park, would be trying to develop some areas in the southwest corner there. I know the school district did express a pretty good interest on field space, soccer fields and things of that nature. That's a pretty low-cost item. It doesn't take a lot to do that. There's no soccer fields in town right now. It didn't actually rank real high in the survey, but again, soccer's becoming more and more popular all the time. And I think something like that would be a good spot to start.
Patrick Blue of Montrose. My question is, we haven't heard the numbers as to what the results of the survey were as far as the percentage of respondents to it in favor or against this project.
No, that wasn't.
I don't think that was a question.
Do you have any numbers to far as households?
Well, the population is 3,000. The households are right around 1,800, and we had 137 respondents.
It sounds, to me personally, it sounds like an awful lot of expense going to something that really doesn't show a lot of favoritism at this time. And my personal opinion, I don't know the feeling of the crowd that's here tonight, but I say we start where the road ends already and put a park shelter in. At least we're touching the soil within this 2-year period, and then come back and revisit it in 2 years before we do anything else. I mean, there's beautiful amenities to go to this, but I think we have a lot of other issues where we can be spending money in the city at this time. Thank you.
I think you had your hand up there. Go ahead.
One of the top things on the list you got back on the survey, and you said there was 138 respondents, is what it was?
Somewhere in that vicinity, 100, I think actually, I just pulled out the survey here, I think it was 100, looks like 144. I mean, each question's a little different, but in that ballpark.
On that, the top thing was to have a picnic area with restrooms, but I noticed that the restrooms are not co-located with that. What was the reasoning behind not putting the restrooms with the top listed item that was on the survey?
You said the top item was what was it again listed?
It said a picnic shelter with restrooms.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess the shelter, we had a picnic shelter located right here, was more of a kind of a gazebo type facility. Then there is 2 sets of restrooms. There's 1 set of restrooms right here. And then there's another set of restrooms within a concession area up here. So, you know, this isn't a fully enclosed structure, and it's really, we located the restrooms down here because there's sewer and water facilities there, so that would be the least costly option for restrooms, so that's why they were located there. And then again, they were located up here because if you have a concession area, you're gonna have sewer and water up there anyway, and it fits well with the ballpark.
Are you not able to swap around the playground area and the shelter for the parking lot?
Swap out the playground area.
No,
This
no,
one?
No, by the shelter.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Move them down and move the parking lot up there. So the shelter and the playground are near the restaurant facility?
Yeah, possibly. You know, I think the reason the gazebo was chosen there is because it was more centrally located with some of the other amenities. The tennis courts are right here, the basketball court is right here, and then the soccer fields are right here. So.
There too, Jeff, that we got a city lift station there, and I don't think we want a picnic shelter next to that.
Well, but I agree with his statement. I mean, if the top thing that the residents that took the time to do the survey, wouldn't that be one of your top things that you would build? Because that's what we want. And if you're having a restroom and a play area, and your child has to go to the bathroom, it's not like you want to go 150 yards or 200 yards to bring them to the bathroom.
Okay. Noted. Yeah. So we're looking forward to input.
Just along the similar lines, I hear that, and initially that would have been the same thought too, but
Yep.
I'm not sure how close you want to have your bathroom to your picnic table. So that might
But
be.
no, I agree, but you know what I mean? You want to have it within,
It's not that far of a distance actually right there. It's probably, I don't know, don't say it's huge, but anyway, my other question was related to bathrooms. Actually, we don't have a bathroom in this park, for example, right?
That's right.
So would there be the possibility of maybe even, if we're gonna look at prioritizing some things, to say, find a bathroom and shelter, but maybe actually prioritize putting an actual bathroom, for example, in this park before we start building more amenities up there? I mean, I just know that, you know, when people go to the park, it's just one of those things that actually is probably not talked about a lot, but probably a pretty high priority. And since we do have an existing park here that doesn't have that amenity, maybe it's something that
I think the mini bis has been used in all the, I think mini, you know, it's been the mini bis has been used in all the parks, to date and all the other parks, just because it's the most cost effective option.
right.
And that's really, quite frankly, probably what you'd be looking at, you know, maybe doing here. I mean, I guess the question is, do you want to put all your money towards the bathroom and have a bathroom sitting there without anything else? Or do you want to put a soccer field in first and then with the mini biff and then on year 2 or 3 build a bathroom?
But the soccer field wasn't part of, I mean, it wasn't ranked high on the survey.
Right?
I heard community pool was number 2. Why would you stick a community pool up there?
I'm glad you asked that, because I actually meant to touch on the pool a little bit. Thank you. Let me pull out my notes from the pool. A pool did have a lot of discussion at the meetings. And everybody saw that was ranked very high. There was a lot of discussion about it. The reason it's not in the plan right now is essentially due to cost. And it's not really the upfront cost. It's more the yearly maintenance cost of outdoor pools. They are very costly to run. They require a lot of labor, a lot of coordination to run them, and just a lot of cost. We did have I just had some preliminary discussion with U.S. Aquatics and Delano, and also we have done some pool projects as well. You can anticipate in the ballpark of $2.5 million for the construction cost of an outdoor pool, and that's generally speaking, you know, not a real elaborate pool. That's more of a fairly simple pool with maybe a water slide and a bathhouse type facility. Then after that, what you can do is we can complete a financial study if it's something that the city wants to pursue even further. But generally speaking, it's not out of the question that you can lose in the neighborhood of $50,000 a year on just a net operating loss of a pool.
What about liability? Was there insurance liability associated with the city running and owning a pool?
I mean, there would obviously be insurance requirements for that, and that would be part of that operating loss and the increased cost for insurance for that. And yeah, it is a liability.
With the price of city law, you don't take a lot of bonds.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Janetta. I don't really have a question, I just have a comment. There's lots of details to be worked out and things that are gonna go. I just want to say thank you. I think this is a great idea. I'm a mom, I'm not a dad, I'm not the income earner, so maybe I'm not the one making more of the cost, but I love that you come up with this idea. I love that you come up with this idea that's just, we're gonna pay for it as we go along, so that when we hear these numbers and we think, whoa, I had no idea that it would cost $400,000, almost $500,000 to build a ballpark. And so at first I thought, that's really expensive. But then I have to go back to, but we built a ballpark. That's within our budget. I mean, if we're not going into debt for anything, and we just do it in the course of time, it's all just a blessing. It's really great. And so I just wanted to say, thanks, I really like the idea, and I'm glad that we're doing that. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Back there?
Now you said you would base the timeline as we go along, and then all the funds would be built into the budget, or would be matching funds from other sources or grants of that nature. In the event that your timeline needs to be accelerated and your budgeted items have to become part of the tax burden, would that go up for referendum?
That would be a city council decision, and whoever's on the council at that time. Sorry to evade the question, but I can't. It's not my position. Yes.
My name is Ron Cooper. I live here in Montrose. I moved here early in 2005, and I expected by now this city would have attracted more businesses that employ 10 to 30 employees and get more business into this community that would help bring the load on us as far as tax burden. I think, you know, spending money on something that I don't feel is going to help attract more revenue to the city, I don't think it's the right thing to do. I would rather see more money spent on bringing more tax base to the city to help us improve our overall position. There's a comment made about the water bills. Yeah, we have extra lines on our utility bill for the wastewater treatment plant bonds, and with my rough math, it looks like we've got about 3.6 million left on that from the original 5.75 million bond. You know, that would be a distant third, is paying it down faster, but I'd like to see more efforts to get, you know, businesses into this community that could help lighten that load.
Thank you for your comment.
Mark, you want to answer that one? As far as how hard the EDA is working on attracting business?
Sure.
It's tough going. Oh, yeah. Well, it's the same where it is already.
We send, Joanne Faust is our EDA consultant, and she works for the city 2 days a month. She comes to City Hall twice a month, and between those visits, she takes calls and talks to businesses. And we have, over the last several years, there's been too many times where we thought we were right on the edge of getting a grocery store, or right on the edge of getting somebody to move into the Berischerhof, and we do a lot of work and a lot of communication, and then it just seems to fall away because the cost is so high. And one of the issues that Montrose has to deal with is we don't really have any empty buildings. If you look at other cities, you know, they have more of a downtown area with buildings that are available to rent or lease, and we're in a situation where we don't really have that. So when a developer or somebody Subway wants to come to town, they have to construct a building. And the people that own some of the property want a pretty fair price to develop that, and I think they're really more concerned about their bottom line than the city's position, and their prices are high, and we are having a hard time competing with other communities because of that issue. And one of the things that this city council's talked about and the EDA is finding a way to purchase property or do something where we can actually offer a better deal on land and actually maybe get some businesses into the community. It's hard, you know. And if anybody has any great ideas, we'd love to hear them. You know, we're meeting with businesses on a regular basis, but it always gets down to money at the end of the day. And one of the biggest concerns we've run into is businesses are afraid that a grocery store is a great example, that the community wouldn't support it. Because so many of our residents work in the Twin Cities and probably shop in the Twin Cities. And they're afraid that this grocery store, if one was built here, would be used more as a convenience store and be very difficult to support it. So that's another issue that we talk about. And I think they're probably right. I think, you know, we all go to Buffalo, we go to Delano, or we're coming from Plymouth, and you stop at a club on the way home. And it's hard to change shopping patterns. And so, you know, we're try to work through all those things. We do traffic studies. We talk about Montrose not just being this little bird, you know, 3,000 people, but we're a much bigger area. You know, we talk about 30,000 people when we look, you know, 5 miles around. You look at Watertown, people that drive through here, Howard Lake, Waverly. You know, we talk about the bigger area, and we're hopeful that, you know, eventually we'll find businesses to move here. And like I said, any ideas or suggestions, we'd love to hear them. You know, we really are working as hard as we can to get businesses here. Thanks.
I guess one suggestion I would have is more businesses that, you know, manufacturing sector, medical device, things that employ, that people that already live here doing those jobs, commuting, could then transition to working local.
You know, we're part of Wright County Economic Development Partnership, and there's a bigger organization that we actually reply to lots of inquiries, county inquiries about businesses, you know, medical devices, whatever, you know, lots of manufacturing. We reply to those, and we do have land. You know, we have a industrial park on Clementa and 12. There's land there. There's a little bit of land left in the Lemmerman Industrial Park, and we do reply to those, and we say we have this land. We don't really have vacant buildings, but we have this land, and so we do attempt to compete with our surrounding neighborhoods. And we do offer, we offer tax increment financing, we offer tax abatement. The city has a fund, it's the Minnesota Investment Fund. When Lyman Lumber built automated building components, they took out a loan from the state, and it was actually paid back to the city. So the city has like a $260,000 fund that we can help businesses, you know, small business. We can help with a little gap financing. And so we do have some financial tools, and we promote those and we use those to the best of our ability, but it really is getting somebody to come here and really want to invest in Montrose.
Hi, Jim Hogberg, Montrose. This is a great idea, but this is a nice to have, not a need to have, right? And from pretty much what everyone has said is they're concerned about the cost, not today, not tomorrow, overall cost. I saw $13,000 minus the $3,000 for the project plan and everything, and there wasn't any dollar amounts overall project put together off that.
No, there was dollar amounts.
Just ballpark it for me. And if you're not comfortable doing that, that's fine, but overall project.
For the entire site, well, add up all the months, I guess, give me a minute and add it all up.
Because I just popped out to the website, and I don't see any.
Under newsletter, under the newsletter?
I didn't see it on the newsletter.
You got that right there?
The other half, this is the newsletter.
Yep.
It's not on the back.
I don't see it on there, I didn't see it on this, and that's fine, if I missed it, I apologize for that, but, I see 120 grand limited for so there's Shell.
They've got dollars.
I don't see any dollars, any sweet. Thank you.
About 3.5 million, not what I did. About $3.5 million.
So we stagger this out over the next 10 years, right? So several $100,000 a year, and we're renting shops in Wright County, no offense to.
That's a whole different topic.
But that's a city, like I say, this is a nice to have, not a need to have. Not to mention, you're competing with Delano, you're competing with Buffalo. I see high school baseball field out here. When's Montrose gonna have a high school?
Exactly.
Because yeah, if we gotta break ground and throw something up on that property in Montrose's name, let's do that, right? But, yeah, number one, businesses. We shouldn't be spending money on parks when I do work in the city. I work in a contract, right? I would be more than happy to spend my money here, groceries, hardware store, anything. I got to drive up to Buffalo to do that, right? Every energy we have in dollars should be focused on getting stuff, so I spend my money here, so Montrose brings that money, right? And I see new city hall out here, that's not gonna be cheap, even if it's 10 years down the road. And I just, like I say, it seems like a nice to have, not a need to have. How much? 4
Hi, it's Jennifer Greenhagen, fairly new Montrose resident, just 4 years here. I just have two quick questions. The first one is, if we commit to starting this, and we don't have to commit to all of the projects at this time, we can change that as time goes along. Is that
That's correct.
Okay.
Nobody said we had to build it in 10 years.
Right,
Nobody
okay.
said we had to build it in 25 years.
Right, so it could
It's
be
just a
however
plan.
we're comfortable as residents in the council going forward. The second thing, you said that you would recommend the soccer fields, is that right? As like
Yeah, I mean,
the
that's
first
just
item?
because, more so vicinity wise is why I chose that, is than anything.
I just want to say, as parents of kids who actually play soccer, and, you know, you sign up buffalosoccer.org, so it's people from Hanover, Montrose, Buffalo, everywhere. There's one place to play. If we had soccer fields here, and the kids from all over could play, potentially we're also bringing in those people from Buffalo and Hanover to businesses that already exist here. I mean, you go to a game, or you go to Applebee's after a game in Buffalo, it's packed with people. You know, I'm sure Jack and Beans would enjoy having it packed with people from there. So if that is something that would be fairly low cost, it potentially could be something that could bring in additional business to businesses that we already have.
Kevin Johnson, short-time resident here, I guess. When you talk about bringing in a grocery store or something like that, just look at the grocery store in Waverly, what happened there? They didn't have enough people to support it, it went down. You know, you have to attract the people first, and then when there's a demand, you know. I mean, if you guys want businesses here, just start a business here and see what happens to the business. Yeah, I mean, you can't start a business. I mean, if you can start a business, start it and make lots of money and bring people in. I think the people come first, and then the businesses will follow the people, because there's no demand here, you know, because we're only 2,800, 3,000 people. And, I mean, what is the size, when you have a big park like this, what's the size of population that can support a park like that? What, you know, like, does Delano have a park system that's that big? What, I mean, is there a community size that, I mean, when we're like 15, 20,000 people, would that big, huge park system make more sense? Or is it 10,000 people, or is it, you know, the size of, you know, Long Lake, or what? I mean, your experience.
You know, I mean, that's kind of up to the community as a whole. I mean, every community's a little different, everybody's got their own little.
But you see something like that, and what
Well, I mean,
size?
you just look at Delano, and, you know, I mean, Delano has do they have one or two baseball fields there? I think they have one full-size baseball field and a fairly large regional playground. Their community center and civic center area building that I have on there is probably somewhat similar in size to the one that Delano has. It's not all in one spot, you know, but it's spread out. I guess, I don't know for sure if they have soccer fields, I would assume they do. So, I guess what it can support, I mean, I don't know, I don't think this is a park for 15 or 20,000 people. I think it's much smaller than that.
Okay.
But like I say, it's the community and what you like to have in your community, and what do you like to use for recreation? Yeah.
Jack Krause, 22-year resident in Montrose. It all comes down to taxes, folks. You don't get the grants, there's a lot of competition for grants. Bonds equal property taxes. They're duplicating things. We already have softball field, tennis courts. It just, the constant cost to keep this stuff up. Mowing, trimming, the building, huge prices. It just looks like a giant wish list to me. You want new fire hall, new city hall. We've got all that stuff. We don't need this.
Once again, thank you so much for developing a plan that doesn't increase our taxes, because we're only gonna build it and we get paid for it. Thank you, for that. Thank you.
Barb, when was this community center built?
This was built in 94, 95, or it opened in 96.
So right now, we're looking at $20,000 for the floor, or more. Ceiling fix, $60-some thousand for the kitchen. And this building is, you know, a little over, you know, close to.
Who built this building?
The
Lions
The
did.
Lions built this
That's
building.
right.
You know what? The Lions paid for this side, and the fire department contracts paid for the other side, and we didn't tax anybody in this town one penny.
That's right.
So I'm trying to say, in 5 years, we probably won't need a city hall or community center, but in 20 years, we probably will.
Don't we need that?
We have the
now?
plan. If the city doesn't want to do it, or the city doesn't want their council at the time to go down that road, that's all a communication thing.
Do we default on?
That's why we wanted everybody here for this meeting. We wanted your input.
Do we default on the land if we don't develop it, or we don't have a?
We default on the land, if we do not show improvement on the land, we default on it. We lose the land and the, what is it, $70,000 in the utilities that are against it. That we've all, everybody that pays taxes here, we are supporting that
Who
land.
gets the land?
I believe it goes up for public auction. So what happens is when taxes aren't paid on property at a certain point, it goes to the state, and then the state turns it back to the county, and then the city has the opportunity to take it or to not take it. And if you don't take it, it goes up for public auction. So in this case, because of the assessment, $70,000, and because of the proximity to County Road 12, it seemed to me like we should take it. It was something that I thought would be great for our community, maybe not today, but certainly down the road. You know, try to look ahead, try to look outside of this year, next year, 20 years from now. You know, the population in Montrose might be 10,000, we don't know. But you have to try to look ahead, and I think if we can develop this without at least, you know, a pay-as-you-go kind of plan, I think it will only help our community. And I think it'd be great if we had it, we were a destination, or we had a destination, and draw more people here. And like one woman said, and I'm sorry I don't know your name, but it will bring people into the community who will help support our businesses, and maybe new businesses will come in. It's kind of a snowball effect, you know. You invest a little, somebody else invest a little, and, you know, hopefully that will help everybody.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for the council members. You're well ahead of the game from some of the other projects that have gone through the council in the past. So we really appreciate you bringing us all in here. The communication on your plan as well has been above and beyond expectations. You've had newsletters, you've had the maps, you're bringing us all in here on a plan, not a definitive answer with what you're going to do with 24 acres of land, just a plan. So I thank you for that. As you take a look at the development of the land, I would urge you to, as you take a look at the phases, try and get the first phase as a revenue generator. Something that as you bring individuals from the surrounding communities, there's some sort of amenity there, some sort of draw that generates revenue. Your residents of the city of Montrose may have a better appetite for something that isn't going to increase their taxes over a however long period of time this whole thing gets phased out. But they may have a better appetite for something to where it isn't increasing their taxes, but it's bringing additional revenue into the community. I would also ask, as you get further into the weeds, as you get into this plan, take a closer look at some of those numbers, you know, especially when we took a look at the beginning, we were looking at $30,000 from moving a pile of dirt to here, there, or whatever it is. Ensure that the accuracy of those numbers is very sound, so that, for example, if every 3 years I have to move a pile of dirt from this 4 acres to that 4 acres, just to ensure that the city doesn't lose the land, because it's a good plan, it really is, it's a good plan. So as long as you move that pile of dirt from 1 4 acres to another, it's economically responsible to the community, I think it's still viable there. So again, just in general, any way that we can get revenue generated off of that property, I think your residents would have a bigger appetite for that. And then to the gentleman's point right over here, you'll get your grocery store in here. Jackie G's will love you, so will Red's Cafe, and everybody else is the individuals when they get done with the soccer game or what have you, go and enjoy their time at those restaurants. The only other question I have, and Justin, right?
Yep.
Is that right? And you take a look at the communities that do have a pool, they're still there. They've been there for a long time. And it's in these economic times, it'd be difficult for me to believe that these communities would sustain that type of amenity if they were losing $50,000 a year. If there's some way to generate that revenue, you've got 15, 16, 18-year-old individuals that are working as lifeguards, right? Keeping the money here within the community. And you know the various levels within the organization that would be governing this area. I think your public would have a better appetite for that as well. Again, I appreciate your time. Thank you for listening.
I've got 3 questions, and the first one I'll lead in with the pool. You got the $50,000 operational expense, but did you guys factor in any amount that we're paying to go to pools? I know I pay quite a bit to go up to Monticello to get a 0 entry pool, and it's like $24 for my family to go for 2 hours. That's really expensive. It'd be great if I could put that money here. My second question, so did you...
Let me answer that. Yeah, that does include, that's net expense, so that includes revenue and expense. I mean, and again, that's generally speaking in nature. We could do a survey in this particular area. Each area is a little different. How many people does it draw, et cetera. If that's something that the council in the future decides that they want to pursue a little further and see really what the cost is of a pool, and they hear a lot of favorism from residents as a whole, maybe that's something that can be done, and maybe that'd be the next step.
My second question is regarding the soccer field. Did you guys work with community ed in any way to find out if they would be willing to bring a soccer program here? We already have some facilities here that are going unused by community ed programs, and so why would they use soccer fields as opposed to any of the venues that are already open?
I have talked to community ed, and they were pretty enthusiastic about being able to have soccer fields here. My understanding is they do not have enough fields, and they would use the fields as part of their program.
Yep. We've talked about Delano a couple times, just in case if anybody's wondering the size difference. They only got about 2,560 more people in Montrose, so they're not that much bigger. I know you drive through there, it looks real big. They also do have a playground manufacturer, so they might have got some of that stuff donated also.
All the work from that playground.
But then also, what's that?
All the work from the playgrounds by that was done absolutely free. Volunteers from the community built that playground.
And did they get the equipment for free, or?
They paid cost of the equipment, they didn't pay the labor, and they didn't pay for the mulch.
So I know some of those, one of the playgrounds we got down here in,
Yeah, we've done several community builds in Montrose. All of them have been community builds, so I don't think the city's paid for any labor for putting it together in the park.
And they donated, Landscape Structures donated the playground equipment at the child care center over here by the street.
Then this one other thing you're mentioning that, you're looking at 10, 20, maybe be 40 years, and maybe some of the stuff you'd cross out and what have you. But you're saying within the next 4 years, it's kind of a toss-up what may or may not get done. But maybe one thing to have there, after you do some grading, is like a nature walk. And maybe the first thing on your list would be building the playground or something like that. I know somebody else I've talked to mentioned just, they have an area you can walk. I think they have something behind the school too already. That'd be somewhere we'd actually bike, if you have a lot more of the houses on the northwest end. We don't really cross over County 12 and come down across the railroad tracks, and it's not really set up real well for bikes going that way. And then just one other thing, a couple people have talked a couple times about swimming pools. At least from what I'm thinking, there might be a middle ground in there. No swimming pool versus swimming pool. Maybe there's a splash pad. Maybe that's the compromise. I don't know. But I know one thing when Buffalo did theirs, they had a big piece in the paper on that. I think that was a huge cost savings. I'll tell you one thing though, I did bring my kids to use it, we only used it once because that water was frigid. That was my kids complaining, not me. So I mean, you can maybe run the pipes underneath the cement to warm it up a bit. We did only use the splash pad once.
I will speak to that, the splash pads in general are much more low-cost maintenance. So there's a big difference there, and those are very popular and getting to be more and more popular all the time in communities. And that's really one of the reasons why, is because of the lower cost and operational maintenance.
Is a splash pad, like Minnetonka Regional Park, what is a splash pad?
I mean, yeah, they really range. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the one in Buffalo that was built a year or two ago. That's probably a lower scale one. I mean, that's more of a kind of a decorative type splash pad that's also used for kids to run through, but a lot of them have more fountains and more playground type features, but they're all basically, they don't hold water. It's really just.
Kevin, if I could speak to that a little bit too, the median age is 29, 7 months for Montrose. The 30-somethings in my neighborhood, I get a lot of feedback telling me that twice a week during the summer, they take their kids to Delano to that park down there, and why don't we have something comparable to that here, because it's drawing them away. Then they go have ice cream there and everything else. We would like to have somebody, and even Sean has said, it would be nice to have a regional park here that is something that everyone in Montrose gets feedback about, and we could be proud of, if this is the direction that Montrose wants to go. Yeah.
We already have 8 parks here in Montrose, and not one of, well, 2 of them have pavilions, the rest don't. And I know for a fact that in my backyard, there's a playground. It's hardly ever used because it's so dang hot out there in the summertime. It would be nice to be able to put pavilions out in those parks, because otherwise I would use it more. I don't know what you guys, but that's one of my drawbacks in my backyard. I can't go up there.
What's Plan B of the 120,000?
Pardon me?
What's Plan B? So next year, 2014, we got $120,000 budgeted for Parks and Rec.
Right.
Of which 30 was going to move dirt?
Create the draining.
That's right, that was going to get refined. Okay, I apologize.
Yep.
Okay, so a certain dollar amount was going to move dirt for that. What's Plan B if we decide not to move, if the council decides not to move dirt with that 120,000? Will there be any of the upgrades that the citizens are asking for the other parks?
Haven't talked about that.
So this is just information seeking. Gotcha.
Right.
Again, appreciate it. That's huge. And we're kind of bouncing numbers between columns, right? So right now there's roughly 890,000 that's going to be coming in on property taxes into the city of Montrose in 2014, somewhere right around in there, right? So of the 890, $120 is going to go to Parks and Recs.
Right.
Okay.
Some of that's
For us. Okay.
See if we can get the Army Corps of Engineers, like Charlie said.
Exactly.
To come in with their heavy equipment, it ain't gonna cost the city as many dollars as what we're doing. If the Army Corps of Engineers can come in and Justin and them can take and put the site plan what we wanted at, and have the Army Corps of Engineers do the job, we'll be saving money.
Absolutely. Great point, and incredible suggestion right there. As we take a look at moving those numbers from column to column, I take a look at my personal finance as a father of 2 young boys, and we enjoy the park facilities. We, fortunately or unfortunately, enjoy the park facilities of other towns. Maple Grove has a wonderful community center. Waconia at the Safari Island. Monticello has another community center. To another individual's point, I pay for those every single time. So if I take a look at my monthly expense on that, it's probably in the hundreds that we're spending outside of this community. So again, just going back to the willingness, I think Cooper brought up a great point as well, the willingness to move the numbers that I'm already investing either within this community or other communities. I'm willing to invest heavily into the city of Montrose. We do as much as we can within the city of Montrose to support the small businesses. So with what that's worth, figure out a way to get me to invest those dollars back into the city of Montrose. Whether that's building a community center, I'm already spending money. I'd be willing to spend it into the city. If that goes on this land, then let it go on this land so we don't lose it. And then there's a 20-year plan. Whatever it may be.
Put a hat on it. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Pass it on to
Got a question back there. Just to maybe continue down that same path, talk about revenue generating. I would just say that, at least from my perspective, and I can't obviously speak for the girls, but the same issues, whether it's my girls investing in going to Buffalo or Delano for swimming lessons or whatever it is, that the types of things that we talk about building here would almost, even if it isn't revenue generating, but it's revenue neutral, I would be content with that. I would even be content as somebody who's already out of our taxes paying for that, to pay an additional fee. Now, I don't want to speak for anybody else, because I'm sure everybody else probably wouldn't, but that usage fee to say, I'm willing to pay so much a season to be able to let my kids go to that pool, to help support whatever lifeguards or, just the chemicals, the upkeep, or, but to be able to do those types of things, I gotta do it anyway. I've gotta pay those fees to go elsewhere, to a different community. So if it can be something that we're at least in discussion, we can be amenable to, it's not something that's an outrageous cost for us because we're already doing it, or maybe it's a lower cost for Montrose residents and it's a little bit higher cost for others, but to be able to have that, I guarantee you, if that was offered here and we had that, I would guarantee I would pay that money here as opposed to going to Buffalo or Delano or anywhere else. So I wouldn't object to that if that's correct.
I think that I can say this pretty confidently. Those facilities, whether it's Monticello or Decker or Jasper or Safari Island, are not revenue makers, and they aren't revenue neutral. They don't make any, they lose money every year, and the city is well aware of that. I mean, this building, we lose money on every year. We rent it, we make $5,000 in rentals, but it costs us 30-some thousand to manage and run it, so that's a decision that the city council and the community needs to decide. Is that worth it is that kind of facility that important that the taxpayers are willing to have it lose money every year? It's a big decision.
I remember part 3 of my question. So that relates to this building. I know for a while we couldn't rent out this building anymore, and it's kind of unfunctional. So what's the status of that? Did we fix any of those problems? Are we able to use this building?
Well, that's not really why we're here tonight. But and the city council hasn't acted on any of that. And we're working on it. It's a work in progress. And
so in order to fit, where I'm getting with it in connection with this is that we have to put a lot of money into this building as is to make it usable as a community building. And there's not much that we can really do with this building. There's a lot of opportunity if we do look into doing the Civic Center. So I don't know if everyone's aware of the situation we're seeing now.
there'll be quite a bit of cost difference between bringing this building back to functionality and building a community center. Hi.
Hi, my name is Kurt DeMarais, and I'm in Marysville Township. I've been there for 45 years. I want to commend the council for the work they've done. This isn't a 2-week or 2-month deal. This has been going on, and their hours are spent trying to develop something. You have to understand, this is a long phase deal. If you get the leveling done, maybe get a soccer field in the next 2 years, that's probably all you're going to get. As the population grows, and it will grow, because we've turned the corner now, I believe, and things are looking up. There'll be more people to share the costs. By the time this is done, I won't be here to share any of those costs. And I understand that. But if your mean age is 29 years old, I mean, these people have a whole lifetime to spend here. You're going to spend the whole lifetime paying for it, probably. But, I mean, if you want to have a city that competes, you have to offer something. And without offering something, Montrose is just going to be as it is. Not that that's terrible, but it just won't change. So thank you.
Okay, Barb, short answer to your question is, if it is cost neutral to my checkbook, yes. And I would urge the residents in this room to throw out some sort of vote on that. If it's cost neutral to my checkbook at the end of the day, the answer is yes. Put up a big honking building so my kids can go into a nice cool pool and then enjoy a day. Absolutely. And then I go to Jackie V's afterwards and have a beer. That's my checkbook.
It's not gonna be cost neutral.
You just gotta figure out a way to make it happen. That's all. Just figure out a way to make it happen. If you can make it happen to your checkbook, why not?
I mean, somebody's gotta pay for it, right?
Right, yeah, absolutely.
And
So-
we're gonna be paying for it. I'm not for or against it, but it's not cost neutral.
So let's say, just for an example, sir,
We're the city.
that we're paying, you and I are paying $100. Let's say you and I are paying $100 to go to wherever, somewhere else, right? That's $1,000 a year. Right now, we're paying somewhere right around 1% in property tax, right? If I take a look at that $100 and add that to my property tax, and in no way am I suggesting that we increase property tax, I'm just using this as an example. But that takes my 1% almost to 2%, right? 2%, or 2% for all of us, that is a considerable amount of money. That's another $890,000 a year to the city. Over an extended period of time, you can have a pretty kickin', some sort of community, whatever, on any piece of property for that kind of money that's coming in each year.
But you can try to calculate that, and how do you calculate that? There's so many different variables.
Agreed.
I mean, it's like trying to figure out if there's global warming.
But, and that is where the council, agreed, that's where the council could hire some sort of statistician that is far more smart than I am. Exactly, that's not, definitely not. But that type of consultant can be sought after, and those kind of numbers could be figured out, so that when the council comes back to us with their long-term plan, those would be laid out. Probably generally speaking, over a population of 3,000, right? That's the only way that you'd be able to do it. But that would come to us and say, look, for 80% of the population within the city of Montrose, this is going to be cost neutral or less. 20%, yeah, you might see $20 more a month come out of your checkbook than what you're seeing.
There's no guarantees, but you're just shooting numbers out, and that's nothing behind that. You have no way of knowing if it's gonna be cost neutral. You're gonna get in the water and then wonder if you can swim.
Agreed. I do believe, though, if we take a look at $15 billion companies, billion-dollar companies, $100 million companies, or $10 million companies that are right up the road, they have to do that kind of forecasting day in and day out. and they gotta be pretty damn close or they're gonna go out of business. And the council probably recognizes that if they don't bring the community that type of tight forecast, that type of tight analysis, they're gonna be out of office and the community isn't gonna vote through a park. I mean, it happens on a pretty regular basis every day within all of our lives.
How about if we draw names for our gift cards, so people want to the way they can, and those that want to name it no longer can. Are we agreeable?
Just so you know, the website does not have the prices on it. No, I just looked on my phone, so it does not. And the city newsletter, PDF does not. Because somebody said it.
While we're drawing the names for the gift cards right now, so that, you know, if you want to leave, you may, but if you want to stick around, I guess I don't know how you guys are going to run the meeting, but it was just brought up that the website, I don't think the brochure on the website does not have the prices on it. But I believe, Barb, we can put that, we're going to put that flyer, we'll put that flyer that we were referencing on the website, so it will be up there within the next few days, or next week or so. All right, these are the winners for the $25 gift certificate. First one is Jacob Nigbit. Second one, Pat Lug. Third one is Greg Yeomans. Corey Potter. Nate Hintz. Joe Hickman. Pat Carlson. And finally, last chance, Art Pester. The question was putting in more shelters throughout with one picnic table. Is that what I'm hearing?
One or two, but there has to be more than one shelter. If you
Sure.
want this to be a family destination.
Yeah, I don't think that's a, you know, I think that's a good point, actually. That's a very valid point. The nice part about these shelters are they're small, and they can easily be placed anywhere on here. You know,
Sean has a pattern for a picnic table that's indestructible.
I'll buy one. So, no, that's a good point, and they can be placed anywhere.
What, are you looking for something from us, or just to talk?
Just to talk, I guess, if you feel, you know, if you're finished or you've said what you want to say and you don't want to hear anymore, you're welcome to leave, but I think we have
we're
a...
looking for some decision point.
I wanted to just throw this out before anybody else leaves, is that my thought, and I'm only speaking for myself, that the council is probably going to lean towards the grading study next, because that seems to me to be the common sense thing to do. If we're going to move dirt around there or don't have to move dirt around there, I agree 100% with what Sean has said many times, that we don't want to have to do the job twice. And if the grading study is the common sense thing to do, and satisfies our requirement for improvement on the property, that is probably the way, the issue that the council is going to take up next, that expense. That's what I would like to hear your feedback on now.
Grading study does not mean grading will happen.
No.
Okay. I would just ask the council then to go ahead and do the grading study. Have some sort of plan that incorporates as much of the feedback as you heard tonight before any grading occurs, because we're somewhere between 30,000 and whatever it comes out being.
We don't know if we're going to do a 30,000 yards or
Correct.
1.3 million yards. And I guess I would say too that it is my intention that in no way would I be happy with placing any burden on the taxpayers of Montrose or myself to further this thing down the road. And I only want to do it as we can afford to do it, as is budgeted for. I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea that we're going to go out and spend $4 million and put in a baseball field and a pool tomorrow.
I'm not walking out with that.
So I have a question. If the council adopts that and then they say they adopt this final conception plan, how easily is this final conception plan changeable in the future to change with the citizens as we move and change? Is it set in stone, or can you move
It's a
things
piece of
around?
paper.
Okay.
Nothing more than that.
Well, that's good to know too, that it's not set in stone. If this council adopts this, the next council can't come in and say,
But I would
whatever
urge,
changes. You know what I mean?
yeah, I fully understand what you're talking about. Obviously, as we get it further and further developed, the harder it is to change it. But I would urge anybody that wants to change it in the future to think through it very thoroughly and think through it as thoroughly as what this council did. So don't all of a sudden decide that you want to change it all up. Go through the motions and get the
Well, I'm
public,
not saying that.
you know,
I'm
get
just
the
saying-
public input. But yeah, no, it's
Right.
completely changeable. Yep.
Technically, this plan is just a piece of paper at this point, without having any surveys or perk tests or soil samples or anything. We don't even technically know this can structurally be built economically or feasibly, financially, whatever, because you don't know what's under the dirt till it's perfect.
Yeah.
Soil sample.
That's
So
correct.
This is just a piece of paper,
Yep.
just an ideal, and it has no whatever.
No, we don't construct anything out there.
We didn't want to get this meeting together without some kind of a plan, because it would have just been chaos. So this is going to spend $10,000 on the plan.
Absolutely.
We got a question way back there.
If you were to complete this whole plan over here, would there be any thoughts to eliminating any of the smaller play areas that are set up around town?
I don't believe so.
I would believe not.
The smaller ones that are set out would be left alone,
Yeah,
including the softball diamond
right.
over here.
Yeah.
I just didn't want this to replace all the other small ones that are located around the community.
There's never been any discussion along those lines. Those are neighborhood parks,
Yeah,
and I
that's what I-
think everybody wants to retain those.
Right.
You know, and I think we should point that out too. The question was point was made, we have 8 parks already in the city. But we have a lot of parks, but they're all, for the most part, pretty small parks. There's no 24-acre parks out there. It takes a big site to put in baseball fields and put in buildings and put this all together in one spot. Northridge is fairly good size, but yeah, that one is pretty big. Is that 11? Okay, so that's half the size of this. There's a fair amount of open space there, but beyond that, there's not a lot of wide open space on a lot of those parks.
It's also in backyard, so they probably have people here don't even know where they're from. You know,
Right.
a lot of our neighborhood parks are just that, they're in people's backyards, and you have to really go look for them. This park would be right out along the highway.
great for us.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make one comment. We just moved to the area 5 months ago. The reason we picked Montrose over Delano or over Buffalo is because of the parks that were here. Because of the community, because there's some amenities. I'd love a hardware store to be here. But I'm glad, very happy there's a couple of restaurants, there's a couple of gas stations, and there's a lot of parks, there's a lot of family stuff we can do here. There is still family stuff. We just signed up for soccer today. We're gonna have to drive to Buffalo twice a week this summer. That would be great to be here. But we still have parks where those days we're not driving to Buffalo, but we're coming utilizing these parks that are over here. We're utilizing some of the tennis courts and the basketball courts that are already here. And I'm just glad to keep seeing that we have the ability to do more with parks. We have the ability to do things. I'm just glad for that.
I got a question for Barb. I think it's probably going to be the ones that answer it. If nothing happens with this area, and it goes back for auction, you said, correct?
Public auction, I believe.
If that took place and the property was sold to individual business, whatever, and it goes back to the tax rolls, approximately what type of tax dollars are we talking about?
I have no idea. I
Leaving
have
this
no
as a
idea.
park versus being
I have
a
no
tax roll.
idea, you know, it would just go back to urban reserve and ag. It's zoned, or I think it's zoned urban reserve. I have no idea what the taxes would be on that.
I just wondering if it's better to take that tax money back than it is to put our resources into that and maybe expand the existing parks we already have. No, exactly, but if it was sold off and somebody new gets it, they would be paying taxes on it. What's that tax money amount?
I don't know, Lou. I could, you know, it's probably comparable to other urban reserve areas in the Twin Cities, in Montrose. I could look that up. Give me a call and I'll look it up tomorrow and see if I can come up with a number.
Herzog. I live in a property that this whole park surround. My concerns are at this point, looking at a retaining wall being put in on the shed area there.
On the west side?
Yep. And as to how close to the building that would end up being, how high of a retaining wall we're looking at. I'm thinking about eventually, it'd be nice to have a privacy fence. I just don't think this is going to do anything to my property value. Right now it's fine. Do a little bit of stuff, it'll be fine. If you get that whole thing going there, the property value I think is going to be down too.
I can address the question about the retaining wall from the standpoint of basically the grading plan that we're going to be doing, or if the council decides to proceed with that, that would provide some of those details that you've asked. So I really can't answer how high, where at, any of that stuff right now. All I know is just based on aerial photography and aerial contours, there's going to be something needed there. And those details can be flushed out, and we can meet with you on a one-on-one basis and talk about that. We certainly would want to do that. Because, yeah, obviously we're going to be largely impacted, so we'll work with you all we can. And incorporate screenings, we can incorporate plantings in the project, and other features to maybe assist in.
I thought about that too, Jim, it's security in your place. And then
I mean,
property value could be relative. Somebody with 10 kids could say, oh, you gotta have this place if you ever decide to sell it. And that could be prime real estate for them, or like you said, you don't like the noise.
Yeah, and again, for myself, I'm just thinking a lot of people, and a little security somehow,
That would be concerned.
Yeah. And it'd be great to get a little more feedback from somebody on what's happening a little sooner. I'm not in the city limits, so I don't get your flyers. I don't get any of the stuff. I do get the phone call from you, Barb, and, you know, definitely pamphlet over. But I don't hear, unless
I'll
I hear.
make sure you get on
grapevine,
our mailing list.
that'd be good. Otherwise, it's word of mouth that I hear.
If you ever see me drive around again, wave me over and we'll,
Okay.
sure talk.
I see you.
Oh, yeah. All the time.
Another question back there.
Melanie, I just have a question. I noticed that you had a plan for a dog park and a tennis court, and neither one of them are on the list of, like, the top, according to the citywide survey, the top things that people were interested in. And since we already have a tennis court at the other park across from the railroad tracks here, I was wondering if it would be a consideration to maybe make the dog park bigger. I have friends with dogs and they really appreciate having a place for their dogs to run around, but this is so small that they say the dogs would fight. And I don't know, it's just nice to have a dog park in town, and I just wanted to suggest maybe having it bigger and maybe not doing the tennis courts.
Which is something other communities around here don't have as a dog park. That would
I can
But-
give you a little bit of feedback on those things. We had put the dog park out there because initially we thought, what's it gonna take to be considered in the early process of this? What's it gonna take to be considered improvements on the property? So we thought, well, a chain link fence around an acre or a couple hundred by a couple hundred would need to do the trick. But since then, the city council has already addressed, if you've noticed, the dock stations around the city, and we've purchased even more to put on our dog stations, to put on our wooden waste cans along the trails, hoping that all the residents will use those to pick up after their dogs. So quite frankly, that was just put on there as at the very initial stage, as a low-cost thing. But that is a good point, and many other cities don't have that. And there was a fairly high request, wasn't it? It wasn't in the top 9 or 10, but I know that it was on there.
No, actually, it was not on that specific question, number 6, but there was a lot of comments throughout the survey where people could write in comments in the document.
The other thing about the tennis courts is that we probably get 2 complaints a week during the summer that there isn't enough tennis courts, because there are people waiting behind the tennis courts. The other thing is the basketball court, when people are parked there to play tennis, the kids can't play, they don't have their basketball courts because the cars are parked there.
So on your dog park thing, kind of goes along with them. Who's in charge of cleaning them things up?
Because I have one of them. If you take your dog to the dog park, if you take your dog to the dog park, you have to pick up after.
Yeah, I know that. What about the waste stations though? Because I have one put by my house, and I can only imagine what a Minnesota summer is gonna bring on that closed can.
Our public works guys are. It isn't me, let's put it
Yeah, back there, I think you had your hand up for a while.
If we go through this grading plan and kind of plot it out, will that allow us to move on possible future opportunities as they come up? I work at Landscape Structures in Delano. I was part of, or I at least had knowledge of what happened when Delano built their big park. Part of it was a prototype site, some of it was Photoshop, or for photos and stuff. So they got the really good deal on that park because they had the space and they could move on it quickly. We're close enough where that's why the little parks over there at the community center, because we were able to put that in and use it as a photo site. So we're still close enough. We have a spot laid out for a playground, and they're looking for a spot to put up a photo structure. Can we move on it, or
do we still have to get approval on?
I'm sure we wouldn't have any problem grading out a site at the regional playground this summer for $200,000 playground.
Well, I can tell you that they get them for half price when they do these photo structures.
Your point is well taken, and whether it be with respect to specifically the landscape structures and having a site ready to move on, or even with grant opportunities, the more site ready it is and the more the application can show that it's ready to move on, gains it more points.
Yeah, but because that's what they're gonna be looking for. They're gonna be looking for a site that's ready to go, you know, because they're not gonna wanna have to come in and build the site.
Yep.
They wanna have some place to come in, put it up, and have something that's gonna look nice in a photo. So, I mean, if that's available and ready to go, you're gonna have a chance at a pretty nice playground for half the price.
Oh. The other thing that is advantageous on grant applications is the more people that you can show that it benefits, the better score the application is. So what I'm saying is the more regional it is, and a lot of the parks and trails types applications, the more regional it is, the better score it receives. So the more we can partner with townships, counties, school districts, the more partnering we can show that we're sharing the facilities with more organizations, more people, the better off we are. So those are some of the things that we've been looking at from day one as we've looked at this. Even tonight, that's why we invited the townships, we invited the counties, we invited the school districts. The more we can show that we're including everybody, the better off we are.
I can say too, the Buffalo Baseball Association, my son plays baseball.
Yep.
They're always looking for more baseball fields to play baseball on. I mean, but they gotta be built right, you know, I mean, they're looking for, everybody's looking for space again. Like
The T-ball field in the
everybody's
corner
always
doesn't.
looking for more fields.
Right.
So if you build that kind of stuff, it's gonna get used, you know, I mean.
So along the regional line and increasing our chances for grants and all the rest, and just bringing in people and to the ladies point back there. Although the dog park was maybe just like a thought initially to do something on the land because it was inexpensive, we could maybe, and we could maybe think about it, and I would maybe even suggest that we should think about making it bigger. Not to the expense of the other things that she mentioned, not to the expense of anything, but if there's more space on there, because while the trails are nice, we don't have a dog now, but we did, and while the trails are nice, unless you're, you know, the nice thing about a dog park is that they can run free, and that's really a high priority. And I don't know if there's something closer, but when we had our dog, the closest thing that we were aware of was included, so, and it was really our dog. We didn't hike all the way there very often, so that's definitely something that would be.
With that, because I've never used one, was that something that generated income, or was that something that was just there?
You mean, did we have to pay for it? No, we didn't have to pay for it, but, and yeah, I don't know if you'd be able to generate income for the use of dog park per se, but people are still coming into town.
Can I ask you, I'm first, we have landscape architects that put this stuff together, so I don't know all the details about this stuff either. I'm gonna ask a question about the dog park since you used one. Was there issues with dogs interacting with each other in a dog park like that? I mean, how does that work?
Yes, part of the advantage of it is that, yes, your dog can interact with other dogs. You know,
that's the whole point.
That's part of the point of
Okay.
it, but having enough space where they're not all crammed together, where they're territorial. There's enough space where if they want their own territory, they can go off and do their own thing. But they can interact if they want. I mean, the dog parks that I've seen have been, or that I've gone to, have all been pretty significant in size, in the realm of, you know, at least a couple acres. But, you know, anything bigger, I wouldn't just say, you know, a fenced-in area the size of my backyard isn't going to cut it. It wouldn't be worthwhile. I wouldn't even bother doing that. I would say if you're going to need to do something, it should be significant enough in size where if you had 10 dogs out there, they're not gonna be fighting at each other's throats over that.
And the thing about it is it's a dog park. So if someone else wants to go into the dog park, they can, but they are prepared for the fact that there are dogs off leash. That's the benefit of it, is that it's the one place where you can let your dog off, and all the people in there are dog people, and they know that the dog's
There's
going to run,
been
everyone's
some
around.
rules. People at dog parks know that there's rules, and you bring your dog, they have to be trained in a certain way and behave a certain way.
You know, one dog park,
We have small dogs and large dogs. so they're not-
that's what I was gonna say, they are separated, as the one that I had seen was separated by size.
And,
Ours.
you know, an option, if that's something that the city wants to move forward with, you know, if we're not building a baseball field or a softball field right away, there's a lot of space out there, it's all graded flat, maybe that's an
You
interim.
could use that as
You know.
dog park in the meantime.
Yeah.
If you're gonna have to fence it off eventually, I imagine those baseball fields or whatever, you may end up having to fence it off anyway, right? Eventually when you build a baseball or
Yeah.
softball field.
Mm-hmm.
You just fence the whole, that little perimeter area and just make it a dog park initially and then move it later. I don't know.
Talk about a driving range too.
Yeah, it's actually showing it just to see how big it is. Yep.
Greg, with respect to this being a regional park, have you coordinated with Wright County Parks as well, and Mark Batiste and his team, to see about maybe looking at a shelter that meets the bill that we had for the requirements that people wanted, as a larger shelter with amenities? One of the great things we have on this site is the closeness of water access and sewer access, and being able to have a full-size shelter with maybe a cooking space or a water space for prep, as well as having restrooms on the other end of it that aren't next to your picnic tables, but having a full-size one that's similar to those that are rented for the Wright County Parks. And there's a possibility that you may be able to get some of the funds from Wright County Parks assistance with that.
That's a fantastic idea, and I think that's something we definitely need to look towards and work on with Mark. We did send it, I believe we sent an invite to him for this meeting here tonight, but, you know, we're sort of trying to figure out us as a city what we want to do here first, but that's a fantastic point, and that's one of the areas where we need to get into their plan, and that'll strengthen grant applications as well. Thanks for the. Yes, Art?
If this thing ever does take off, what I can see here is the parking is not going to be the greatest, and traffic control. Aspen has been known to be pretty big. If we have young kids running around over there, someone's going to get hurt.
Yeah, as one of the early meetings with the park people, several of the moms said, you know, we're gonna have to have speed bumps and stuff like that. And my son lives in Rochester, and they have probably 40 acres of soccer fields. And same type of thing, it's very controlled parking. And that's why I was happy to see that it get actually closer, because I don't like to have to walk a mile to the far soccer field to watch one of my grandkids play soccer. But their area is very speed controlled with the bumps and stuff like that. And there are so many, it's so packed on a Saturday and a Sunday that you wouldn't believe the amount of people that use that. So, yeah, traffic control would be a major concern.
Yeah, because you're showing soccer, if there's going to be people using it for soccer, it's going to be a problem with parking. Or if you ever go with baseball. I'm just concerned, I live down that area, and I just don't, I don't want to be coming home and got to fight through, trying to get a car to my home. Because you got cars parked on both sides of the road, and you're trying to fight in between everybody trying to.
Right. And I see that a lot in Rochester.
I think
the
that's
parking lots are full, and there are people parked all up and down the side streets.
That's a point well taken, and I think that's another reason to do the grading for the bigger site as a whole too, because we could use, in the interim, we don't have the money to build all these parking lots, but, you know, there's nothing to say that people can't go park in the grass, and we real awesome areas for parking.
I think of Red Lodge in Waverly when you said that.
Yeah.
You know, there's never enough places to
No,
park.
there's sometimes when these things go, it's gonna go. You know, if it's, we get the right, we get the trees, we get the park-like settings, it's gonna take off. But, like I said, I'm concerned about traffic and, you know.
Yeah, the parking looks like, if I were to say, if you had 4 soccer fields or 6 soccer fields actually active because of a soccer league or something like that, there, you could have 40 or 50 families.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, one parking lot there, you gotta cut it, so.
Yeah.
One, two, three, four.
Yeah, you get all, but this is the last phase of development down this bottom, so.
Sean, yes, what's the width on this road that's there right now, where we're at the
Arapahoe Lane.
Sounds about right, yeah.
33 feet? So that wouldn't allow parking on either side, would it, or just one side?
Both sides.
What would be, I think the council should look at maybe a possibility of, when we go up around, if we ever get to that point, up around and the ball fields and that, I know what size you're talking about, the width of the street. What would be our additional cost if we went to like a 40-foot wide street so that we've got some room for pedestrians getting in and out of their vehicles on, say, the driver's side? And also the possibility of bicycle traffic or foot traffic.
We also were concerned about emergency vehicles.
Exactly. I mean, you're talking about a big area where you're gonna have a lot of congestion, hopefully, at different periods of time. If we can allow the parking on one side or the other, or both sides, you know.
One way that would eliminate traffic on both ways.
Well, I don't know. One way would probably work on there, but I'm just thinking, you know, we have to think of the little ones like this that are jumping out of mom and dad's car, you know, because not everybody uses common sense and has them get out on the curbside all the time. But I'm just thinking, you know, we're gonna have bicycle traffic, surely, foot traffic. We're not looking at any sidewalks along that road.
There's a sidewalk.
Okay.
Maybe just don't allow for any parking on the street. If that's the concern, if the safety is the concern, then I wouldn't allow for any parking on the street. On the street.
See, I think that we
I
should
know.
have lots of parking on the street.
Yeah, the more parking you have on the street, the more chance you have of kids running in between cars, and it's difficult to see. So, I think that's good points, and probably something we need to be looking at as we further the plan more.
As the mama who has little kids and
Yeah.
probably really misses them is going to the park, I don't want to have to schlep. I would rather just make sure that the kids go inside on the curb, so don't be like, so, oh, there's a possibility that this might be unsafe, and so you better make it really user unfriendly. So just bear in mind that it's a trade-off.
I think, personally, I think it,
Park.
personally, I don't, you know, as this progresses over time, hopefully, I don't think we should allow any parking on the grass. I mean, we're talking about land that we're going in, and we're moving land, and, you know, starting to design things, and we all know, a lot of people don't use common sense. The grass is wet, they think, well, I can still go on there, and next thing you know, you got four holes in the ground that Sean's gonna go up and fill in, you know, sometimes. So, I would say stay the same width than Arapahoe Lane is. Either figure out parking on one side of the street or both. But like Sean says, you know, we still gotta consider getting people through there safely, and, both motorized traffic and bicycle traffic and foot traffic, and then our emergency vehicles, just in case something should come up.
I would like to ask a question before anybody else leaves. If the council votes for the survey, and then we say we have X amount of dollars left in our budget, what do you want to see from us? Do you want us to go with the lowest dollar, like the expanded dog park? do we want to do another survey? Do we want to do another public meeting to get feedback?
What's the projected cost of this one shelter to start with?
18,000 is what's on that one.
I say personally, if we've got the money, and we've got roughly the 18,000, we put this pavilion in first as shelter. We already got the road there. Now people can come up there, see the pavilion. If it's in this location or wherever, pretty close to this road that we already have in there that ends. And I think it'll give the people that want to go to this park the chance to go up there and start visualizing the area that we've got. And I think their feedback will come back to you guys on council or the next council or whatever. And more ideas will pop into.
Maybe a couple of boards up there with these on, and we should get the feedback, as people are up there visualizing.
I think if we get the shelter in there first, we don't have to worry about the bathrooms right now. I mean, everybody can go find a tree most likely. Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there are no trees.
What I'm saying is, get the shelter in first.
Last time they Jim wanted to say something about that. There isn't a single tree out there. We don't want that.
Well, I'm just.
This golf course has got 30,000 trees in it, we plan on moving. We need to start doing that now, because it'll be 30 years before we can enjoy it.
Well, I
My
think you should
suggestion
probably
is-
do the testing first to see if you can even build them.
Right.
And I agree with the revenue things right away versus just a shelter to sit in and look at the land and say, yeah, we got some land out here. There's a dog park out there, it's really inexpensive, it draws some people, those people might come to the community, spend some money.
Well, if soccer's the big deal, I mean, why would you not put in a soccer field? If the school
Yeah,
will,
I understand.
well, the school
Revenue.
will partner with us and use them for their school function, why?
We got some real positive feedback from the school, and
Yeah.
I was excited to hear that.
And the Army Corps of Engineers thing, that was awesome, Charlie, I never even thought of that, I mean, that was like, yeah, good deal.
Over here, input?
I just want to know if, you're saying that the soccer fields will be used by the schools, but I want to know how they're going to be used by the schools when Buffalo Soccer is actually not run through community ed. It's its own independent group, and it's Buffalo Rec Soccer.
Yeah, but they're looking for more space too.
We would need to talk to the individual group.
Really, what community ed said to me is there aren't enough fields, and they didn't specifically say for the school. So they could have been talking about the soccer club, including that in their conversation.
And along with this, if we did do the soccer field, you could, as you stated, we could overlap it with the outdoor hockey, correct?
Right. Yep. I mean, that would be additional cost to put up board, to get the boards and such for that.
Right, but we could also look into joining in with the hockey associations to do that. Right?
More the merrier.
Would the plan be to pave through to start with, or would you only pave up to the point of where your amenities would be? So the road that goes through, would you only pave up to the point where you access whatever amenities are built first? Or would the first plan after grading would be to actually just finish the road?
No, the road is very expensive.
Yeah.
So then you have to figure out, not just from a parking perspective, but you gotta figure out how much road you can put in, and then would you grade dirt all the way through, or would you
When
stop
you
it?
put the road in, you gotta put city sewer and water alongside of it too, to go with it. So you ain't taking twice on the property.
Talking about are you familiar with our access road that when you come down Aspen, that you go back to, this near road back there, there's a little service road back there, probably something like that, correct, Sean?
Yes, it would be a class 5 to begin with, and then more or less a cart path for now. We don't want to spend a whole lot of money and then have to dig it up and put water and sewer in. And power, it's going to be street lights through there, power for a baseball field.
When you go to a point of doing the road, you're gonna wanna do significant, you I would say you're gonna wanna go up to at least, the top of the second parking lot, so just north of the concession area. You know, I could foresee you not having to go all the way to the north right away and cut some costs out of it, but you're gonna wanna do a significant portion of it when you do it. It's not something you wanna put in 100 feet at a time. Yeah? Yep.
So in answer to your question, you know, what do we want you to, what do we, you know, I think that I think you should do something, and it should be a balance between, this is just my opinion, you're asking for our opinions, a balance between something that's the least expensive, but maybe not the very least expensive, a balance between the least expensive and the most bang for buck in terms of all the aspects. Bringing in people, letting people know that it's there, you know, getting it used, it being high on the priority list. And I think that if you did, I definitely think since it's super cheap and it would be a regional thing, the dog park is a great thing. It's going to use space that you can't use, you know, you could use space that will be maybe used for something else, but you've got the space and it's easy to do, and that'll make it regional. And then, you know, the picnic area, so I'd say definitely start with those two things because they could be used together and it would make you put those two things together and it's probably maybe the two least expensive things. I don't know how expensive the soccer field would be. So I don't know if you could do all three of them, but if you could only do two of them.
So you said the dog park, what was the other one you mentioned?
The pavilion, the thing that's high on the list. And I don't know how much money we have, but if you could do all three of those with the amount of money we have, we probably would, because I don't know how expensive it is to do a soccer field, but man, right out of the gate, you'd have something that was really drawing people in and could be, you know, useful for the least amount of money. I'd say those are the top three things.
Especially if the dog park draws from other communities.
It would.
Then
sure.
it gets people here standing on our land saying,
Yeah.
look what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
And they're gonna keep coming back and checking our progress, I think.
Yeah. But you gotta get the word out about the dog park.
Yeah.
I
I was gonna suggest that there were a couple of people that had issues with the size of the dog park and stuff like that, that they would go to the park meeting. And that's on what?
First Tuesday.
First Tuesday of the month. And those would be the people that would need that information so that you can bring it back to us.
I guess my question in return to the dog park thing is, I think, my personal opinion, and I'm not here to give opinions, but I am just going to offer something on the dog park is, I think you're going to want to have something besides the dog park and that not be the only thing, because what's the park there for? Is it for residents to use or for their dogs to use, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, so I think, yeah, like a stocking deal or something would go on with that would have to be done at a minimum.
Absolutely. The dog park is just something you can throw in there with something else to bring in the regional element, but for sure you want like a picnic area or the, yeah, I agree.
Seems to me like the value of, you know, basically on your design here, you got the U8 fields, which could be also used as an outdoor hockey rink in the winter. But then expand out in later years, so basically you don't need to necessarily go out and build 6 soccer fields to start with. You could start with 2.
Yep.
And then, you know, if you find that that's always a capacity or it's being used all the time, then add a couple more, so you can scale all these things out over time without having to drop a big expense up front to build something that's not going to be used. So,
Hockey is something that we have, well, we do put up some hockey, I don't know, what do you call it? It's not really a hockey rink, it's more of just an ice skating pond, I guess you might say, right now. Other than that, that's the only thing that Montrose has. So that is something else that is currently not in Montrose that would be added.
Is that on the list?
It was on the list.
a good, well-maintained, flooded, managed
Outdoor
hockey.
Yeah, hockey rink
Outdoor skating rink.
Hockey rink / warming house was together, and that was, you know, right in 34%, so it was right in that bunch of them right together.
Do you have a question?
Okay.
Right there, I think we got one more.
Yeah, I'm hearing all the percentages looks like 34% for hockey rink, but I believe you said that roughly about 150 people have actually submitted back the survey. Now, considering that the town population is only around 3,000, how can you build or like actually design a park based off of what 5% of the population said?
Well noted, and everybody said the same thing when they were going through the survey results. They were reviewing it and they were taking it in, but it was taken in knowing that it was 140 people out of 3,000. So it's sort of taken with a grain of salt a little bit. I mean, we would love to get 2,000 surveys back.
That is why the council unanimously insisted on the public meeting, because we wanted as many people here with your feedback as we could get as to our future direction.
And we appreciate that, but as council members, as a citizen who, I think I filled out the survey, but I don't remember if I did for sure. It was a while ago and I had just had a baby, so I don't, my memory wasn't all that. But whether I did or I didn't, I would say my opinion is, please, you have done as much as I can possibly imagine that you could do to get feedback. And if only 137 people sent in a survey, then the other, I'm really, really bad at math, but the other, if we have 3,000 people, the other, whatever, 1,800 people to make really round numbers, they don't really have much of sort of a leg to stand on to say, hey, you know, you didn't take in money. They had the right to send in the survey, so.
Sure.
Go ahead, Ashley.
Coming off that, I also heard that you did the best you could to get as many responses to the survey as you could. Living with my mom, and never heard the end of this, I've heard quite a few times that many people had no clue that there even was a citywide survey for this. I believe
We put it on the website, we put it in the newsletter. I think we even put it on the utility bills. So,
Ashley, in living in a townhouse association before I came here, I know a lot of people, when they get that piece of mail that says from Montrose City Hall, it goes right in the garbage. So I look at them and I say it's your own fault because you didn't open up that piece of mail and read it. Because we had a situation where we had to pay out some money on our townhouses to fix them so I could sell it. And as a small group, we decided for the whole community of 240 some townhouses. And I had people come up and complain to me and said, did you open your piece of mail that said from, you know, our association? They say no, they throw it away. And to me, that's your own fault for not taking the time to gain the knowledge about what's going on in your community. So, I mean, that's their own fault.
I guess that's it, unless there's any other questions. Thank you for coming, we really appreciate you spending your evening here. If you have other questions, you know, feel free to call City Hall or send an email. We'll answer the best we can. Thank you.
Right?
My question to you would be, what would be the difference between